Old School Tactical, a new game by Flying Pig Games, a game that comes in a big box, but most importantly in a heavy box. This has to be one of the heaviest game boxes that I've ever had the pleasure of dealing with. So if you pre-ordered it, or if you ordered it, be careful when you pick it up. Don't mess up your back. It's enormously heavy for reasons that you will see later. In this video I'm gonna tell you part about the game, and probably most of the video will just be musing on why the heck it is called Old School Tactical. It is tactical, but there isn't much that feels old school to me, which is not a bad thing. It just feels like a pretty modern design. Actually, it has something in it that reminds me of both Conflict of Heroes. The presentation is very similar to what you have in Conflict of Heroes. Mechanic, it also reminds me of Tide of Iron. So pretty new pretty new concepts, pretty new games, trying to give you low complexity tactical games, and this is what this game does too. It's a low complexity tactical game, just like Conflict of Heroes and Tide of Iron. It is set in World War II. In particular, in this game, which is the first volume in the series, this game is about the Eastern Front, 1941-1942. Always a crowd pleaser when it comes to presenting a game to wargamers. If you have a new system and you're looking for a theme, that of course is a setting that will always make the wargamer sense of wargamers tingle. They're always going to be excited. I know I was. So, low complexity tactical game about World War II with a title that doesn't seem to fit the game at all. Let's see how the game works, and then we'll go back and wonder about the title. And maybe I'll even share an idea or two about the game itself. This is one of the two enormous, gargantuan mounted boards that come with the game. It's really huge and looks really great. You will probably recognize the style. A style that is very reminiscent of Conflict of Heroes. The map looks great, it's huge, and it is still also very functional. And actually, to draw a comparison, here is one of the mounted boards for Conflict of Heroes. As you can see, it is physically much smaller. Of course, in some scenarios you will put together several maps, but still. It is physically smaller, but also functionally so, because the hexes the map are much smaller here than they are here. That means that Old School Tactical is a larger map functionally because it gives you more options, more areas of operations, more places where things can happen and decisions can be made. Really an impressive map. And it's not the only one that comes with the game. Here's the other one. Here's the other map. It represents an area of operation during winter, as you can see from a different color palette, but it's not just a cosmetic thing. It's not the same map with different colors on it. It's a different area, different region with different terrain features, so different challenges and different tactical options. Definitely an impressive production. I mean, there's just a joy in playing on these majestic boards. Of course, the drawback is that it takes more table space, but most wargamers probably have a dedicated space where you can place large maps, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem. The game features many types of units, the most common ones being infantry, vehicles that have combat capabilities, trucks that do not have combat capabilities, and leaders. Infantry has an attack value, a range, the number is written very small there, a defense value, and a movement value. So yes, some of the numbers are pretty small on the corners, but fret not. The game comes with cards with the basic information and important reminders for every type of unit. This is pretty neat. For some of these, that may not be necessary, like the rifle squad. You can see more or less the values, the range after a turn or two, you'll remember. But it is still nice to have these cards as play areas that you can keep by you as you play. As for vehicles that have combat capabilities, actually these cards are very important because on top of summarizing the same information you found on the counter, you also have a combat table that is used to resolve combat against other vehicles. Neat stuff. We have vehicles. We said they may have combat capabilities. This corner here, the red corner, indicates the orientation, the facing of the unit, which is important for attack and for defense because vehicles are not armored equally well on all sides. Here we have the firepower that is used against soft targets with the range, the small white number. Here we have movement value, defense value for the front, and defense value for the flank and the rear. So as you can see, much less good. Then we have the red number here, which is the firepower that is used against other vehicles. And we have here, in this case, a secondary weapon. Trucks have movement value and defense value, which is not very good. And leaders, so leaders pretty much work like infantry. The main difference is that they do not have a combat value that is used to attack. The number that you see there is range and indicates the distance at which units may be, the maximum distance at which units may be to benefit from certain benefits that the leader may lend to them. And again, we have a card here that tells us all the things that the leaders can do for their people. Now, the game is played in turns divided in impulses, and players will receive a variable number of impulse points to spend during their turns. Different scenarios will tell you how many dice you roll to determine how many impulse points you have. Say, there's a scenario in which both sides roll 3 dice. I'm rolling for the German player has 14 impulse points this turn. And the other player, the Soviet player, has more. So, well, tough for the German player that will have to deal with having fewer impulse points. Players then alternate spending impulse points to perform actions. So usually you can spend an impulse point in one of your impulses to perform an action with a unit. It is possible, however, also to perform group activation, to activate 2 units that are together in the same hex, and that costs 2 impulse points. That's a case where you can spend 2 impulse points in the same impulse. Common actions are moving, an assault move, which is movement that ends in the same hex as an enemy unit and triggers melee, or firing combat. The interesting thing is that here units, yes, once they act, they are marked as a reminder of what they did, but you do not necessarily get to only act once per turn like in so many other games. For example, units can fire up to twice per turn without penalties. So the first time that you fire with a unit, let's put it here so it has some line of sight. The first time that you fire with a unit, you place a marker there to indicate that it fired. The second time that it fires, you flip it to its use side. And if you're really desperate, you can still fire with a unit that was used, but in that case, you have a penalty, and also the unit is then automatically shaken. It takes a shaken marker to indicate that now its capabilities are reduced. Well, because the stress was so high. So you can use an impulse point to activate a unit for movement. Units move up to their full movement allowance. This is the chart that tells you about the cost of different type of terrains in terms of movement points, effects that they have on the defense, and whether they block or do not block the line of sight, and whether they degrade the line of sight or not, which is degradation. You don't see it in every war game, but I like it. I like it because it gives you something between seeing perfectly and not seeing at all. It means you can still attack well without penalty. So you can activate a unit for movement, and in that case you mark it with the moved marker, because if it fires later in the same turn when it has this marker on, there is a penalty for firing after moving. And of course you can fire. Firing works in different ways depending on the type of target, and soft targets and hard targets work in different ways. Now, first, we talk about firing between infantry unit, or attacking a soft target such as infantry unit is. To attack, first you check that you have line of sight to your target, and you check that the target is in range. Then you subtract the defense number of the target from the attack number of the attacker. In this case, if the Soviet unit fires at that German unit, the result is -1. You may also have to apply and take into account other modifiers to determine your firepower. For example, distant target, if you're in melee, of course, that's pretty brutal, pretty violent, degraded line of sight. Once you have your modified firepower, that tells you the column that you will use on this combat table. Then you roll 2d6. There may be modifiers that you apply to the die roll, such as firing after moving, having a leader, height advantage or disadvantage, and so on and so forth. And you cross-reference the column with the modified result, and you will have one or several of these letters as the result. And the letters indicate X, destroyed, C, casualties, you lose steps, like in most war games, B, broken, S, shaken. Broken and shaken are morale results that the units may be able to avoid if the unit passes what in this game is called a gut check. It's a morale check, and it's called morale check. I don't know, call it gut check. It's both cute and somehow feels unnecessary. So the scenario will tell you what the gut value of the units is for that scenario. You roll dice, and if you roll equal to or higher than your gut value, you're past the gut check. Otherwise, you didn't, and in which case you suffer a penalty, which may be to be shaken, which is a penalty on firing and moving, or much worse, broken, which does not allow you to move or fire at all. For armor combat, when you're firing at a hard target, this time you use the red combat values. And it's a two-step process, as it usually should be, as it usually is in so many war games that represent armor combat. It's in two steps because you need to first determine whether or not you hit the opponent, like your shot makes contact with the opponent, and then you have to determine whether or not it deals damage actually, and in that case, how much. First, you look at the combat table on the reference card for the unit that is firing. In this case, I will use this card here. The combat table, I look at it, I count the range, I check again, line of sight, then I count the range, and I determine the column that I will use in the first step, which is to determine whether my hit makes contact with the opponent. In this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, the range falls within this range here, and so I use this column here. I roll 2d6, and if I roll equal to or higher to that number, I did score a hit. If it's a miss, well, it's a miss, that's it. But if it's a hit, then the card also tells me the firepower that I use for that attack. So actually, the firepower that you see printed there is not necessarily the firepower that you use every time. It is the maximum firepower. And in this case, it just so happens that in this case, the firepower is not diminished by range, but in case of other vehicles, it is. The range gives you different numbers to hit, and also different firepower that will be used to calculate damage, and well, if damage occurred at all. We have, again, the other side of the player rate, or the combat player rate. This is what we use for infantry, and this is what we use for vehicle combat. We apply modifiers to the firepower. Well, first, actually, here are the two hit modifiers that we apply when we are determining whether we hit or not at all. That is, we apply them to the 2d6 roll that we performed before. Then we have the firepower modifiers. Again, we have to calculate to determine the column that we will use. So we subtract the armor value of the unit that we're attacking using the front or flank and rear, depending on the direction of the shot. We subtract the defense value of the target from the firepower of the opponent or the firing units to determine the column. For example, here the raw total would be like 2 minus 2 is 0. There may be modifiers to the firepower. We determine the correct column, we roll to the 6s, and we apply the result that we find at the convergence between the row and the column. And results may be destroyed, in which case the unit is flipped to its right side and it becomes a terrain feature. Or it may be damaged, or broken, or shaken. In this case, again, you have a gut check that you need to take to determine whether the crew of the vehicle remains effective or not. And there are several other things, of course, but these are the main concepts, at least the concept that they will use all the time. Then there are the things that are more situational, weapons that are used more rarely. Then you simply play the scenarios that use those weapons after you became familiar with the easier scenarios that revolve mainly around these things, and you're good to go. Other things, however, you can rally, yes, when your units are broken or shaken. You may take a test, you may spend an impulse point to rally them, then you roll 2d6s. And to rally a shaken unit, you need to roll 7 or higher. To rally a broken unit, you need to roll 9 or higher. At the beginning of a turn, all shaken or broken units get to take a rally test for free. But if you want to take it during your turn, they have to spend an impulse point. Opportunity fire, this is important. How could I forget? When an opponent is moving your line of sight and range, you can use a unit that still has fire capability to perform opportunity fire. You spend, of course, resources to do so. I always like tactical games that have opportunity fire. I will almost say, if they don't have it, I don't know how I can take them seriously. Cards, luck cards. Players during the game will receive these luck cards, which are, some of these are pretty powerful. Some of these effects are really neat, like canceling a hit entirely, getting extra movement, which can be neat because it may allow you to reach a defensive position that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise, pressing an attack. A lot of interesting stuff. Of course, these are kept face down, and you reveal them to the opponent. Boo! When it's less is the most annoying for the opponent to see that effect performed against them. A little extra unpredictability, a little extra flexibility for the players too. But in general, this is a game that has a lot of flexibility thanks to the fact that you can activate your units multiple times. You can spend impulse points in different ways. So there is definitely that aspect there that is interesting. Melee combat, it's part of the assault. It's pretty much magnified regular combat with more losses and different modifiers. But these are the general ideas. Start easy with the easy scenarios, and then you add complexity as you go, and you have a lot to go. The scenario book is pretty thick, just to give you a sense, and each page is a single scenario. It's not like it takes 2 pages for a scenario. There's this thing that's the scenarios are placed like this. Well, you know, they are placed in a landscape format rather than portrait format. I guess it works this way. You can have the information, you can have these in a long line. So of course you have setup instructions, description of the situation, victory conditions, and so on and so forth. But you have a lot. You have a lot of scenarios. I like to do that nice thing where I flip through the pages, but of course I'm so clumsy that all the pages fall together in one big block. Lots of scenario, lots of replay value. And once you start playing the game and you get the main concept, of course, it will be a breeze for you to create your own scenarios too. Victory conditions depend on the scenario that you're playing. What's all cool about it? I really don't know. I mean, the one thing is that there's a combat table that you do not have in some of the modern games, but that's such a staple that you still have in also modern games that doesn't feel all that old school at all. Maybe something reminiscent of Panzer, the Panzer system, both the original system and the new implementation that you see here. Is the idea that you had this 2-step process to resolve combat against vehicles. One to see if you hit, one to see if you inflict damage. There is a specific table for each type of tank indicating the capability and how the firepower of the tank or the vehicle decreases with range, which is not the same for all models, for all vehicles. Armor not being the same in all areas of the vehicle. This is something that you have in Panzer and that you have here, but this is handled at a much lower level of complexity than you have, for example, in Panzer. It seems like a simplification, of that system, which, however, still gives you a lot of flavor, still gives you historical detail. That one, Panzer, is much more detailed, is much more technical, with the advantage of the extra historical flavor that you have there. But of course, there's also procedural complexity that for some war gamers may get in the way of enjoyment. here I would say you had that sense, you had those core ideas of armor warfare that are presented at a level that is very accessible. So as you may have gathered from at this point, I enjoyed the representation of armor warfare that you have here, because it still feels detailed enough to be strictly interesting while being very easy, very straightforward and fast moving. Resolving a combat between two tanks doesn't take half an hour. You don't have to shift through to sift through a lot of charts and minor rules. There's a lot of hardwiring that has been done here, so that the historical element is part of the design. You do not have to worry too much about following many procedures. It is very intuitive. Overall, this is the general idea behind the design. They try to make it intuitive. They try to make it such that you do not have to worry about too many sub-rules and extra rules. It is all there in the design of the units, in the design of several general procedures that you apply to a lot of situations. Yes, then you have specific procedures for artillery, for certain types of vehicles that are a little trickier to control, certain types of weapons in particular, but nothing major, and especially nothing that you have to worry about at the beginning. The learning curve is not all that steep, because you can start from easy scenarios, you get the general concepts, and then you add more complexity later. The flow of the game is pretty neat, it's pretty interesting. I was a little skeptical at the beginning about the completely random assignment of impulse points. I thought, what happens if a side gets 3 points and the other side gets 18? I guess such a case may occur, and maybe the one that completely throws the game off balance. It just so happens that I haven't seen that occurring. Statistically, is a rare occurrence. And I guess that if once in a while it does happen, well, once in a while it also happens historically that you have this complete, incredible reversals of fortune. The important thing is that it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't feel like it is so statistically significant that half of the games will make no sense because of that. Maybe there will be a single turn in which one side will receive a crippling blow, and then they simply set up the game again. But in most cases, you have a difference there, which is not all that huge, which presents challenges to one of the sides one turn, and maybe the other side the next turn. So there's also that aspect. And I really like the flexibility of the system that you have here. You have a little more flexibility, I find, or I would say you have a different flexibility from what you have in Conflict of Heroes, where you spend command points, and you spend points too, and you alternate with the impulse. But here you can spend them in different ways. You can fire units multiple times without having to spend special resources. That is simply the standard thing that people do. You have a lot of interaction because of that. Units that are not completely spent for a long time, almost never completely spent really. They have so many chances of doing a lot of things, but if you're concentrating a lot of resources on a single unit and spending a lot of points there, then there are other areas of the battlefield that you're probably neglecting. But the fact that is interesting to me is that the system leaves that to you. You decide how you want to spread your points, your impulse points around, and perform a lot of things, or concentrating them on just a few units in case all of a sudden an area of operations becomes crucial. Then you can devote all of your attention there. Flexibility, freedom, a lot of freedom for the players on how they want to handle things. Other than that, I would say you know some of these systems, you know most of these ideas from Conflict of Heroes and or Tide of Iron. So it will be very easy for experienced wargamers, but even for casual wargamers to jump in. For absolute newbies, this is still a game that definitely can be enjoyed and learned and played without any particular problem. I would say this is actually would make for an excellent first war game for the war game curious of you out there. For those that never played a war game, this could be a perfect entryway to the hobby. I don't see any problem. A lot of scenarios, a lot of potential for creating your own scenarios, for creating your own firefights. It's a solid game. game and a solid box. You'll probably kill a person with this box, so be careful. Don't kill yourself or your pals. And if you do so, well, the game can also be played solitaire, so as long as you don't get caught. Oh, this is turning dark soon. It's a good game. Yes, it can be played solo. Just don't murder your friends in the process. It can be played solo because you do not have much hidden information. There are the cards, which are powerful, but they're not a game changer that would prevent you from enjoying the game solo. And the unpredictability due to the impulse system makes it such that you cannot see too far ahead, and you can still surprise yourself all the time, even when you're playing both sides to the best of your possibilities. Probably expansions can be added. I hope that it will be in the future for those of us that have a hard time playing both sides at the best of one's possibilities. An expansion, I think, can be added to create an AI so that you can play full solo. But as is, most Wargamers will be able to enjoy the game solo even if no one is around out to play the game with you. It's fun. It's simple, but it creates interesting decisions, creates interesting situations. Good narrative there, pretty much what you want from a tactical game about World War II. What's so cool about it? Not much really. The cover, it's a little drab. It does remind me a little bit of some old covers, but those are minor things. Actually, in a certain sense, the box is misleading. When I looked at the box, I thought that the game was going to be drab and colorless, or very little color in it. And then, of course, the production values turned out to be very high in here. Old School Tactical, Volume 1 of a system that I enjoy, that is easy to play, easy to learn, flows well, has a nice pace, creates intense action with a lot of options, a lot of gameplay options for players that can use resources in a huge variety of ways. It's a good game. It's a good game. I recommend it to new wargamers or to wargamers that want to have an experience of playing a tactical game, which is reminiscent of some games that you probably played, but is different and gives you a level of flexibility that you do not always have in games at this low level of complexity.